I like it raw.
Raw. Ooh, baby, I like it raw.
Ooh, baby, I like it raw.
Well, throughout history, massive volcanic eruptions have had damaging effects to our planet and its people. Well, scientists at NASA are now trying to prevent future events, which they say may just be the only way to save the human race. RT's Trini Chavez explains.
Supervolcanic eruptions have had some devastating effects on our planet and all those on it. Therefore, experts at NASA are working on some risky strategies to prevent one from happening, since we may be on the brink of one erupting very soon. Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming is famous for its tranquil geysers and hot springs. But beneath its beautiful surface of the park lies a massive volcanic chamber that could be on the verge of exploding. According to the United States Geological Survey, 3 extremely large explosive eruptions have occurred at Yellowstone in the past 2.1 million years, with a reoccurrence interval of about 600,000 to 800,000 years. The most recent took place 640,000 years ago, suggesting that Yellowstone is overdue for an eruption. But outlets like geysers and hot springs at the park can bleed out some heat, delaying the inevitable eruption. And when NASA experts analyzed the problem, they thought the most logical solution would be to cool the volcano down. NASA has a plan to drill a hole into the side of the volcano and pump water through it. When the water comes back out, it'll be heated to over 600 degrees, slowly cooling the volcano. The team hopes that given enough time, this process will take enough heat from the volcano to prevent it from ever erupting. According to the BBC, Brian Wilcox, a former member of the NASA Advisory Council on Planetary Defense, talked about the actual devastation that could come from an eruption and the risky techniques that the agency is considering for preventing one, including ways that could potentially set one off. The possible plan would drill into the bottom of the Yellowstone volcano using high-pressure water to release heat from the magma chamber. But Wilcox said this could be very risky. He told the BBC this can make the cap over the magma chamber more brittle and prone to fracture, and you might trigger the release of harmful volatile gases in the magma at the top of the chamber, which would otherwise not be released. Although NASA is considering other plans, it seems that cooling down the volcano could work even though it's a risky process. And it's not cheap either. The plan would be around an estimated $4.5 billion.
Scientists have long known that Yellowstone National Park sits atop a huge supervolcano. But what they've discovered is that it's bigger than they thought. University of Utah researchers detected a vast pool of magma deep beneath the park, enough to fill the Grand Canyon 11 times over. Jeffrey Kluger is Time Magazine's senior science editor. Good morning, Jeffrey.
Good morning.
So tell me, this place that everyone goes to take selfies is really sort of like a ticking time bomb.
It is a bit of a ticking time bomb. This reservoir of magma, as you say, could fill the Grand Canyon multiple times over. If it blew, it would cover parts of 3 states, Wyoming, Idaho, and Montana. It could enter the jet stream and, as a result, ground air traffic in the same way the 2010 Icelandic volcano did. It could also cover the Earth with sort of a slightly sky-darkening blanket, briefly affecting climate. Think about the Mount St. Helens explosion in 1980, and now multiply that by 1,000.
It's been down there, Jeffrey, for 17 million years. We've just figured it out. So finding this, what does that tell us, finding this?
Well, first of all, it tells us how this volcano, the long-term life of this volcano, could be a very, very long-term life, because the deeper caldera feeds the higher caldera. So even if there was a smaller blast tomorrow and the top canyon was out of juice, the bottom canyon would simply fill it up.
I don't want to add more doom to doom, but I'm curious, do we now have a complete idea of exactly what's under the surface, or are we still, there could still be more?
No, we do have a complete idea, and the way they did this was very elegant. There are hundreds, even thousands of small earthquakes in that region in the course of the year. So with an array of 80 seismometers, researchers from the University of Utah sort of took I think of it as a subterranean CAT scan, because seismic waves move a little more slowly through hot rock than they do through cold. So when you analyze that, you suddenly got a complete picture of this enormous caldera beneath the ground.
There have been 3 giant eruptions in the past 2.1 million years, with the last about 640,000 years ago. I think I remember that one. So when do we expect the next one?
Well, here's the thing. It's a fairly accurate science predicting when these things are going to blow, but only in the short term. We can say within a few weeks, a few months. But when you're predicting out to a scale of tens of thousands of years, that's different. Now, the next one should come within 60,000 years if this blows every 700,000. But the problem is 60,000 out of 700,000. We're in a misdistance of 9% here, so we could have some problems.
Will this new discovery lead to better estimates of future seismic and really just volcanic hazards?
It will, and it will for two reasons. First of all, because it helps us better prognosticate what's going to be happening or could happen in Yellowstone. It also provides techniques to look at other supervolcano sites around the world. The way I like to look at this one is this volcano is very unlikely to present a problem in your lifetime, in your grandchildren's, great-grandchildren's, unless it does.
So I shouldn't be worried walking around Yellowstone that the ground is going to...
Exactly.
Unless it
Not
does.
this week, anyway.
That's reassuring, Jeffrey.
Yes.
Thank you.
Rumors are rumbling that the Yellowstone supervolcano could erupt sooner than expected.
Many of the top researchers keeping an eye on the caldera are right in our own backyard. Fox 13's Kirsten Nunez has been talking to them.
We're going to take a look at the two big questions. Is the Yellowstone supervolcano going to erupt? And if so, how much damage will it cause here in Utah? To answer these questions, we took a trip to West Yellowstone.
People ask when it's going to go off, if we ever hear anything about it.
A charming coffee shop in West Yellowstone.
The locals aren't concerned at all.
Sits on the edge of the world's largest supervolcano. Remnants of recent super eruptions make Yellowstone National Park extraordinary.
Yellowstone National Park has about 3 billion or so years of geologic history in it.
In those billions of years are three important points: super eruptions 2.1 million, 1.3 million, and 640,000 years ago. But when is the next one?
There's always that question. There's always that fascination.
Unknowns lie beneath the beauty in the countless chambers of magma, an active volcanic system. Scientists say a super eruption would blanket most of the U.S. in a thick layer of ash, sending the Earth into a volcanic ice age. Rumors of that looming possibility started swarming when a swarm of earthquakes shook Yellowstone this summer.
We located about 2,800 earthquakes in that swarm. So it's probably, as far as number of earthquakes, it's probably the second largest swarm we've ever recorded in Yellowstone.
Nearly 300 miles from the park.
These are all Yellowstone seismometers. This is real-time data, so coming in from right to left.
Researchers at the University of Utah keep a close eye on the caldera.
We have a continuous monitoring network in Yellowstone. So we have about 30 seismometers that are collecting data all the time, about 100 samples per second.
Most of their research is centered right here at Old Faithful, and that's because of how reliable it is. A lot of their sensors are buried right in that hillside.
And we're constantly locating and finding out how big these earthquakes are, where they're at.
And operations seismologists at the U have led since the 80s, working closely with those at the park.
Our relationship with the University of Utah Seismic Group and Jamie Farrell in particular and Bob Smith is integral to our work here in monitoring the volcano.
The question these researchers hear often: when is the supervolcano going to erupt?
The likelihood of this volcano, Yellowstone volcano, erupting in our lifetimes is very, very tiny.
But what about the earthquakes, the studies, and endless headlines?
And Yellowstone is very popular in the media all over the world. So anytime something happens in Yellowstone, typically it gets blown out of proportion.
With all the confusion these rumors are causing, geologists say before that supervolcano erupts, there will be three things that will happen.
Increased seismic activity, increased ground deformation, and then changes in the hydrothermal system or increased gas output at the surface.
And all those things have to happen at the same time. Geologists say we'll have some type of advance warning, but Yellowstone's past doesn't give enough information to guess when or if it could go off.
3 big eruptions is just not enough data to make a statistical call.
A lot of unknowns, but not enough to keep Utahns away.
I don't worry about it. If it affects us, it affects us, right? I mean, we're all blown up. We're all covered in ash, but I don't worry about it. I don't think it's a concern.
Well, can you think of a better place to be if it actually happens? No limping away from that one.
While that threat is always there, as for now, the volcano alert level is normal.
I am the park geologist. I live and work in the park. I have no plans to leave the park anytime soon. You are safe here.
All the experts I spoke with say the natural disaster Utahns should be concerned about is an earthquake. That's far more likely to hit the Wasatch Front sooner than any ash from the Yellowstone supervolcano.
Yellowstone National Park could be sitting on a time bomb. There is a supervolcano underneath the national treasure that's more than twice the size of the park itself. The U.S. Geological Survey says the volcano last erupted 630,000 years ago. Joining us now is Derek Pitts. He's the chief astronomer and planetarium programs director at the Franklin Institute Science Museum in Philadelphia. Good morning, Derek.
Good morning.
So you're here to scare us.
Absolutely.
It's 2.5 times the size of what we thought.
Yes.
How significant is that?
Well, it's really significant because the magma chamber below Yellowstone, it measures about 55 miles wide, 20 miles in length, and it's 6 miles below the surface. This chamber is absolutely packed full of magma, and an eruption from this could really cause widespread destruction all across that region.
As if that was not scary enough, some of the experts now are saying they have no idea when this eruption could take place.
Yeah, there are plenty of earthquakes that happen out there, as you said a little bit earlier, but those earthquakes are indicative of the activity that's going on below ground. Some of it may be caused by water intrusion and other things like that, but the fact of the matter is that there were 3 eruptions of this region before. There's definitely going to be another one in the future. Scientists just can't tell when.
When you say future, though, the reality is this could be real, like 40,000 years future. Is that right?
It could be. Yeah, it really could be. We have no idea, though, but there will always be adjusting earthquakes in that region, so that region will remain seismically active. It will also be volcanically active. There will be small volcanic eruptions in that region. It's just the big one that people really have to be concerned about. And if we can get the science a little bit more refined, we'll have a better idea of when we might have some ballpark idea of when to expect something might happen.
Okay, so now you're starting to comfort me a little bit, because I was going to ask you here, I was going to say, are we going to get any warning, like maybe a century or so, that this thing's coming?
The really cool thing about how science is working in seismology and volcanology these days is that scientists can really model the area well, because there are seismic detectors, 40 of them, all around the region, measuring in different ways, and essentially taking an X-ray, if you will, of the ground below, so that they can figure out what's going on better and have a better way to get a grip on how to say when something could possibly be coming.
How were the earlier estimates so undervalued? I mean, how come scientists didn't realize how big that well was?
Well, it's very difficult to have any idea of what's going on underground. I mean, we're looking at something that is 6 to 9 miles below the surface of the Earth. It's enormous. We never thought that the magma chamber could be that big, and so we didn't know what the parameters were around which we had to measure. But now that there are so many more sensors coming to the site to be used, you know, the advances in technology and model making and things like that help scientists to get a better picture, so we have a better idea, more accurate than in the past.
You hinted at this before, but I mean, what would an eruption really mean?
Well, this is so big that previous eruptions, the last eruption that happened 630,000 years ago, was measured to be about 2,000 times greater than the Mount St. Helens eruption. 2,000 times bigger. That's enormous. It's enough to, the last eruption spread 10 feet of ash in regions 1,000 miles away. Wow. So that's a pretty big eruption.
I mean, Yellowstone National Park is also located in a really seismically active region, isn't it?
Well, you have to think that the whole region essentially is the basin of an ancient volcano, under which is this enormous sort of chamber of magma that's causing the region to heave up and down all the time. So it is going to be seismically active for a very long time to come.
But 40,000 years, Derek, right? I'm okay.
At least not tomorrow.
Yeah, let us know when those predictions get more solid.
I'll call you.
Derek Pitts, thanks so much.
And visitors of Yellowstone National Park have been advised to keep off the roads. That's because the heat from a supervolcano beneath the Earth's surface is melting away the asphalt. Park officials have closed the 3-mile-long roadway known as Firehole Lake Drive and have asked visitors to park on the sides of the road. Park officials warned that stepping on the seemingly solid asphalt could create an illusion, and you could quickly find yourself stepping into hot water. Literally. Park officials say it's basically turning the gravel into oatmeal. This roadway is the main access to such geysers as Old Faithful, the Great Fountain, White Dome, and of course, Firehole Lake. Maintenance teams will now remove the melted asphalt from the roadway and apply sand and lime to absorb the rest. And if the supervolcano at Yellowstone National Park erupted, its debris could cover the entire United States from coast to coast. That's according to a new study published in Cubed. That is the Journal of Geochemistry, Geophysics, and Geosystems. Some scientists predict the catastrophe could happen as soon as 2016, while others go as far out as 2074. The majority of experts, though, believe that this will not happen anytime soon. But whatever the case, the group put together the study model to display the effects of an eruption, and it's pretty fascinating. Earlier, I spoke with RT correspondent Lindsay France about these findings. I first asked her what the odds are of a volcano erupting in the first place.
Well, as you said, some scientists say it could be relatively soon, and others, the geophysicists who authored this study, say it's not likely at all. This model is created just to show what the collateral damage to us would be if a major eruption did happen. Now, the Yellowstone caldera, a caldera is the crater formed on a massive volcano when the major eruptions cause the top of the volcano to collapse onto itself. That caldera alone spans 34 by 45 miles. Now, this was formed over 3 eruptions that happened over the past 2.1 million years. Now, let's say there was an eruption that was going to take place. If that were the case, we would be seeing lava flows from it. We would be seeing possibly a smaller volcanic eruption. And of course, preceding all of this, we'd be sensing earthquakes as that liquid hot magma flowed up to the surface and created those fissures and filling those fissures and creating earthquakes as it prepared for this giant explosion. None of that's being sensed. So to put your fears to rest, there you go.
Now, if it happened, though, what damage would we actually be looking at? Would we be looking at like another Pompeii?
Well, that's exactly what I was thinking when I was reading these articles. Come to find out, actually, they do know that when talking about the volume of debris ejected from the volcano, they say that Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, and Colorado would be completely covered in many feet of this ash. It would cover the coast to coast of the United States. And it might sound a bit startling, but it's entirely plausible that this could actually happen. It's estimated that it would spew 330 cubic kilometers of volcanic ash into the sky, and the last massive volcano out of Yellowstone, according to scientists, spewed tens of thousands of cubic kilometers. So it's not completely impossible.
Now, as we saw in that big volcanic eruption in Iceland, you recall that a couple of years ago, it blocked out travel between the U.S. and going into Europe. I mean, would we be seeing a similar effect with our travel systems or cell phone towers or communication?
Well, absolutely. The infrastructure we all rely on would be completely, as you might guess, out of the game for quite a while. This would affect crops. It would affect growing food, not just jet engines getting us to our holidays and our vacations. It would affect generating power, breathing clean air, water we drink, everything.